Well, hello, welcome back to my virtual sofa here at the Stanford Symphony channel. And we've had some wonderful feedback about these videos. A lot of you are watching them, and it's been fascinating to get to know members of the orchestra beyond what they normally do just on the stage at the Palace Symphony. It's been fascinating. And my guest today is absolutely no exception. There's so much more to him than just the principal percussionist of the Stanford Symphony, and it's a great pleasure to welcome Daniel Haskins. Dan, hi, how are you?
I'm fine, Russell. How are you? We're welcome to Rockland County, New York, where we're locked in like everywhere else.
I was going to ask you where you are. You look well. You've been okay in these last few months?
Yes, I'm very fortunate. I have a big house and lots of toys to play with here, my instruments.
Well, I'm not surprised you need a big house, because in a moment we'll see why. But you are the principal percussion of the Stanford Symphony. Tell us how you got involved in music, percussion, and found your way to us in Stanford.
Well, as a child, I took piano lessons, and probably around 10 years old, I became interested in the drums, and I wanted to be in a rock band and play the drum set, which I did. Because I had the piano background, when I got to middle school and played in the band and orchestra, I had some experience with the keyboard. So parts of the xylophone were given to me right away. And that sort of led me to be involved with symphonic percussion, not just the drum set. I went to Manhattan School of Music, where I was inspired, and my passion was the timpani and percussion. Although I still played the drum set in those days, what happened was I was introduced to many drum set players that were way better than me in New York City, and their passion was completely the drum set. And so I sort of took the direction of where my work took me. My work took me to the timpani and to mallet percussion. And so even when I was in college, I got a job as timpanist of the New York City Opera National Company, and I went on tour, and that sort of led me to everything that I do now.
And how did Stanford come into the picture?
Matter of fact, I probably substituted in the Stanford Symphony many years back, but I was never a member. I would say only in more recent times I became a member and principal percussion. That's a thing about the Stanford Symphony, is there's so many of us in the orchestra who've known each other since college for many years, and not just from Stanford Symphony, but we work together in all these other places. And so when we come together in Stanford, it's just like old home.
Like a big reunion, yeah. Yeah, we're missing it terribly. I mean, those of us in Stanford, in the office, it's just awful. We can't wait to get back to the Palace and record something, hopefully for the season ahead. But time will tell. Now they call the percussion section the kitchen section because it's got so many instruments that make up a percussion section. And unlike other instruments, you need a lot of different techniques to play them all. They're not all, it's not like a violinist has just one technique to make the instrument work. You have to do many different things. You mentioned mallets, for instance. Just talk us through those various sets of skills you need.
Yeah, so in general, the big percussion instruments of drums and timpani, and the mallets, meaning the keyboard instruments, xylophone, glockenspiel, vibraphone, they all are basically can be a very similar technique. You're using your hands. Maybe with the marimba or the vibraphone, you might use 4 mallets, 2 mallets in each hand. But that basically can be a similar technique. The other small percussion instruments may have specialized techniques. The tambourine, certain hand drums, congas, bongos, require like a completely different study to produce the sounds that are needed.
And something that fascinates me, and it's obvious when you think about it, but you have to think about it before you realize this, the layout of the instruments. We've done last season we did a piece of Joan Tower, and we did some other big pieces which needed a lot of percussion instruments, and you watch the 2, 3, 4 of you moving around the section, and you suddenly realize he's got 4 bars to get from one end of the group of instruments to the other, move his music, be there in time. There's a sort of whole plot and plan that you have to do to make that work. And then you might have to make it work for several pieces in a row because there's no time to change. How do you do that?
Yeah, so my experience with that is these various casino showroom type shows where there would be a famous star singing and there'd be a traditional big band, maybe with strings, and a drummer, a rhythm section, and one percussionist. And the one percussionist would be me, and I would play all the instruments, timpani, xylophone, vibraphone, conga drums, bongo drums, shakers, and you make a whole big setup. Each one of these shows would be completely different, and part of the challenge of it was you would go to the venue, and then you had one rehearsal, then that night you played the show. So planning out how to set this up so that you could get to everything, turn the pages, and not get lost. But and also because you're sight reading, you're reading something for the first, therefore second time, unless you played that show before it came around again, was sort of a challenge, but a fun challenge. And so it sort of inspired me. It's also the type of thing that is in most Broadway shows, where there's probably quite an elaborate setup of different percussion instruments that the orchestrators are aware of now, and they put it in. The other part of that challenge is you only have so much real estate, so much space to put your stuff, and how you're going to do it. That's a skill that comes with experience, and there's certain traditions on how to do that, but it's fun.
I bet. Take us on a tour, if you would, of your studio there, and tell us, you mentioned the drums, but what is your favorite percussion instrument? Do you have one that, if you had a choice, you'd play all the time?
The answer to that is no. But over my career, I have had favorites, but it changes. Sometimes this room is a big mess, not because of the instruments, but because I'm packing up or unpacking from somewhere. So there's cases, stands, not just the drums, but the stands, brackets, and things that hold it all together. They're all over the place. And then you're packing it up, putting it out the door. And then a big truck comes and takes it to the Palace Theater in Stanford, Connecticut, or somewhere else.
I wanted to ask you about the logistics, because a violinist needs one hand to carry their violin case. You need, as you just said, a van, and I mean, it's a big operation, right? I mean, it takes all day. And
yes.
How does a typical day work at the Palace?
Well, I'm fortunate that I have all these instruments. By the way, I get paid for bringing all the instruments, and so it's not just that I'm doing it for fun. You get paid for this service, and so I personally own 30 timpani drums. I own 5 xylophones, 3 concert bass drums, those are big ones, and 2 and 3 smaller bass drums. You don't need all these things for 1 week or 1 job, but it's basically like a grocery store, things you might need. And on many engagements, sometimes I need a complete duplicate setup. So because we're rehearsing in one place, one of the orchestras I play in American Ballet Theater, we play at the Metropolitan Opera House, and we move in there with a big truck of all my stuff. For the whole season, we bring everything. And the first day, we play, and then we have to go out and rehearse somewhere else because the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra is still in the building, rehearsing in the rehearsal room. And so we have a duplicate, which is also my stuff, rehearsal venues. So anyway, but right now, since we've been off for a few months, I've tried to clean up this room so it's not such a mess of everything. And I have put things away, sort of in mothballs, out of sight. I don't want to see, I don't need this, I don't want to have an experience of sitting in a storage closet. So I put things away, sort of like the airlines have taken their planes to Roswell, New Mexico to let them dry in the hot heat. Here's some mallet instruments, the xylophone and the glockenspiel, a collection of snare drums. Snare drum is the instrument that most percussionists play first. Drummers, the snare drum. It is, the principal percussion would usually play the snare drum, but it's actually not my favorite percussion instrument. It's the standard percussion instrument, but I prefer to be more diverse, play all the different instruments.
The snare drum, that's the instrument that opens Bolero, right? And
correct.
You play it all the way through for the whole 20 minutes of that piece.
Yes. So, and that piece, the challenge with that is not, it's a very easy part. The challenge is it's in your mind to be able to be consistent and not space out.
You're right. Yes.
Yes. Here's a vibraphone, and this is something I'm working on right now. I have it out. I have microphones on it. I'm orchestrating a solo piece that's for piano onto the vibraphone, and it's taken me a while to figure out how I'm going to do this because the piano version of this piece is well, first of all, there's 88 keys on the piano, and the vibraphone has 37 keys. So there are certain low notes that I really want to have, like a low pedal or something. And I probably will record that using some electronic, I'll play my vibe part once I learn it, and then use some electronic instrument like this, which is a synthesizer that looks like a piano keyboard, the black keys and the white keys. And I can play any sound that's out of the range of the vibraphone and mix that in with the computer. Okay, also over here this is a sort of unusual instrument. These are Viennese timpani from Austria. And when you say, what's your favorite instrument? Currently, this is it. This is a small type of timpani you could sort of see compared to the big timpani, which are in here, and the small timpani over there. They're calfskin heads, and they have a sort of a different shape and mechanism for changing the pitch. And I also play in period orchestras. So there's a few projects here of the Baroque timpani.
Now, I want to ask you about how you percussionists, you may be sitting there for 45 minutes and then you stand up and you do the cymbal crash, and that might be all you do, but my goodness, it's important. And my goodness, it has to be done right. How do you, I know some of you guys can count in your sleep. It's so amazing. But do you get nervous about that? And
not about that, but that's a good question. What we do is, there are occasions where there is something that's not familiar to us, where we do count every measure, but we try not to do that. You try to learn the music and mark something in the part during rehearsal that let's say, the French horns are going to go bananas here, right? That French horns. And then you sit there and you wait for the French horn moment. Now I know where we are. And you're right, because it's such a visual thing. If you were to stand up to play the one cymbal crash in the Dvorak Symphony and you missed it and you had to sit back down, it would be noticeable. It would be noticeable, yes.
So I promised our audience earlier that there was a lot more to you than principal percussion of the Stanford Symphony. You produce videos, you book orchestras, you do Broadway. This is an incredible portfolio career you have. Tell us a bit more about the other parts of what you do.
Yeah, so I did, when I was on tour, for 10 years I did these tours that would maybe be a month to 2 months long. And it was the New York City Opera. And the opera percussion we play the same opera every night for 2 months on the road all around the country. I needed a diversion. And that's when I took up magic. And so I studied magic. And because every single town, I had a new venue, a new audience in the local hotel, at the local restaurant or the bar or whatever. So I did that. And then also I worked at Radio City for many years, and that I took up photography during that because I had access to this incredible place and all these dancers, and it was just visually so fantastic. And I took a lot of pictures in those days. And now I've been doing video and video editing. Recently, for another orchestra, I did something like we've seen with the orchestras where everybody's in the little boxes, much more simple. Opera singers and their accompanists putting their parts together to make we had a 45-minute show of many arias and songs like that. And also for American Ballet Theater, we did one of those big orchestra videos like we did at Stanford Symphony with Amazing Grace. And it came out terrible. It was very bad. And because the editor, who was a fantastic video editor, didn't know how to do the audio or didn't have enough time to make it work. And so American Ballet Theater said, could you make some videos with our musicians, much more simple? And so I did a bunch of those for the American Ballet Theater YouTube page and their website. And then some projects just for myself, just for fun.
And you've gone around the world. I mean, you've done something with a Super Bowl commercial that went far and wide?
Well, again, many of these things like the recording of the commercials and movie soundtracks, I've done these, and I have some, I'm very proud of a few of them, but I wasn't the top guy in New York. And New York, it doesn't happen very much anymore. So I can't say I really made my living doing those. But I did do a bunch of Super Bowl commercials, and there's a moment where Britney Spears sings "Pepsi for those who think young," ding, and then she winks, and there's a little bell that goes ding, and that's me. I'm the bell of.
All right. Well, it's good to know that, and I know at the end of this talk, we're going to put a few of your clips up so we can see you in action across the many, many fields that you operate. We're just very lucky to have you in Stanford, and we miss you, and we can't wait to get you and the whole team back in the Palace in as much as we can in the season to come, and we'll just see where this situation takes us. But Dan Haskins, thank you very, very much for being on my virtual sofa today, and stay well, and we'll see you very soon.
Very good. Thanks, Russell. Good to see you.
Mexico seduce me.
To think young.